I saw this clip pop up on my feed the other week. It's Ricky Gervais, who of course is an atheist, giving this reason as to why he is not a Christian.
Any fiction, in any holy book, in any other fiction, and destroyed it, okay, in 1,000 years' time, that wouldn't come back just as it was. Whereas if we took every science book, right, and every fact, and destroyed them all, in 1,000 years, they'd all be back, because all the same tests would be the same result.
That's good. That's really good.
So Ricky's argument is that if you destroy the Bible, it won't reappear in 1,000 years' time. But if you destroy everything in science textbooks, that will reappear in 1,000 years' time. Thus, Ricky Gervais puts his faith in science textbooks, but he doesn't put his faith in God. That is the gist and the premise of his argument. Now, as you'll have seen, Wes Huff, you'll have seen his face there. Wes is doing some great work at the moment, and Wes gave a great answer to this, which I will link below. So if you want to see Wes Huff's answer, I'll link it down below. However, in his video, he only gave one refutation as to why this argument from Ricky Gervais is nonsense. So in this video, I just want to add some things. Because in truth, this is a really weak argument from Ricky, which very readily and easily disintegrates under scrutiny. And there's just so many ways in which we can pull this apart and dismantle this. So in this video, here are 5 reasons why this take by Ricky Gervais is complete nonsense. Starting with number 1. Ricky Gervais is committing the logical fallacy of false equivalence here. In other words, science textbooks and the Bible are different kinds of books. They're different genres of book. And this is really, really important. Essentially, he's comparing apples with oranges here. In truth, the Bible is actually a library of books written over thousands of years by many different authors containing many different genres. There's so many different genres within the Bible. But one of those genres in the Bible is history. The Bible is often reporting on things that happened in history. Now, if you destroy history books, it's true that they won't come back in 1,000 years' time. But that's not because the events in those history books didn't happen or the events aren't true. It just means that knowledge of those events has been forgotten and lost because the books have been destroyed. That's why we don't remember it anymore, because we destroyed all the books. We destroyed all the evidence. For example, if we deleted all books and knowledge and artifacts of the Titanic sinking, in 1,000 years' time, it's true that those books would not suddenly reappear. But that's not because the Titanic didn't sink and the testimonies of the survivors aren't true. It just means the events have been forgotten about because the books were destroyed and the testimonies have been erased. And it's the same thing with the Bible. If you delete all knowledge of the walls of Jericho falling down, or the Exodus, or the life and teaching of Jesus, or him being crucified and rising from the dead, it's true that those books may not reappear in 1,000 years' time, but that doesn't mean the events are not true and didn't happen. It would simply mean the truth has been forgotten about because the books have been destroyed. So in short, if I can put this as concisely as possible, historical events don't become untrue simply because we don't remember them anymore and because we destroy the evidence. And if you disbelieve everything that couldn't be replicated by other people in 1,000 years' time, then you also disavow all art and poetry and much wisdom as well. I mean, if you destroy the Mona Lisa or Michelangelo's David, those things would not suddenly reappear in 1,000 years' time. But that doesn't mean they didn't exist, or the artists didn't exist, or that they weren't geniuses. All it would mean is that we've forgotten because we destroy the evidence. And it's the same thing with truth. The truth doesn't cease to be true just because we forget about it and just because we destroy all of the history books and all of the evidence of that truth. Secondly, Gervais is committing another type of logical fallacy called a false dilemma. In other words, he's implying that you can believe in God or you can believe in science, but you can't believe in both because God and science are opposed to one another. They're mutually exclusive. This is a really common fallacy that was used a lot by the new atheists about 25 years ago, which is actually where Gervais pulls a lot of his ideas from. When you hear him speak, you can hear the echoes of Dawkins and Hitchens and Harris. And they also did this. They tried to set up God and science in opposition to one another and said, pick one. because you can't have both. And this is a false dilemma. The truth is that many of the world's most revered and important scientists were or are also Christians, or at least theists. It's not one or the other, faith in God or faith in science. Pick one. In fact, true science is often what leads people to God. When they discover that all life is coded with DNA, which is information written using a 4-letter chemical alphabet, and they consider that all information comes from intelligence, or when they see the nano machines that make our body function, or they consider the order and fine-tuning of the universe and the cosmological questions, so many things are screaming at us intelligence and design. And when people realize this, it leads them directly to God, the creator. The physicist Werner Heisenberg once said that the first gulp of natural science makes one an atheist, but God is waiting at the bottom of the glass. The more you look into the wonders of creation, the more it leads to God, not away from him. Francis Bacon once said something similar. He said that a little science leads one to atheism, but an in-depth knowledge of science brings men to God. So it's simply not true that you have to be one or the other, or that science and God are opposed. You can love science and you can also love God too. Thirdly, in trying to set up science and God against one another, Gervais doesn't seem to understand that the reason that science began and flourished in Western civilization in particular is because people believed in the Christian God. That's how intertwined these two concepts are. You see, in the polytheistic Greco-Roman period, it was thought that the various gods that ruled our universe and that ruled our lives were these random and capricious beings. They were always fighting with one another and just acting on whims, and therefore the world itself was a random and capricious place, not worth studying because it's all just so random. I mean, who can know the mind and the whims of the gods? It's just all completely random depending on what kind of mood they're in that particular day. And this was the kind of thinking around most of the world for a long, long time. But Christianity came along and said, no, the world was made by one creator God, and this is what he is like. He is good. He is constant. He's unchanging. He's wise. He's orderly. And he designed this universe and designed our lives with purpose and precision and with laws. Therefore, his creation is worth studying and can be studied and can be understood and known. As C.S. Lewis writes, men became scientific because they expected law in nature, and they expected law in nature because they believed in a legislator. The whole scientific endeavor began because men came to believe in a knowable legislator, i.e., the God of the Bible. That's how the early scientists actually saw themselves. They saw their science as an attempt to discover the mind of God through what he had made. That was kind of their mission, to discover and know God better through his creation. That's why modern science was birthed in Christian lands and why modern science owes its roots to Christianity. Christianity is the soil that allowed science to grow and to flourish. Fourthly, when Gervais says that if faith in God was deleted, it wouldn't come back again in 1,000 years, the overwhelming evidence says that actually he's wrong and that he's falling into a trap that almost all atheists fall into, which is the trap of implicit atheism or default atheism. You see, atheists often surmise that everyone is intrinsically born as an atheist. Atheism is our default position, and that people therefore have to be brainwashed into having a faith. You often see this in their memes. So if you wipe faith from the earth today, the idea goes that everyone would simply revert to their default atheistic state and faith would never come back again. However, the evidence shows that that is simply not true, and in fact, the reverse is true. The evidence shows that we are in fact all born default believers, default theists, default worshippers even. Studies have been done that prove that we are all born with this instinctive belief in eternity. And if you try to suppress or delete faith, it just comes back again in one way or another. I mean, look at it this way. For thousands of years, so before the internet, before TV, radio, books, long distance travel, different civilizations were developing largely independently of one another for a long time. So people in Britain had no idea what was going on in China. People in China had no idea what was going on in Argentina. The Argentinians had no idea what was going on in Scandinavia. And yet, overwhelmingly, every single one of those world civilizations instinctively and independently formed some kind of spiritual belief that said there's something more beyond this world. They all independently came to the conclusion there was something more beyond this world, a spiritual realm, something to be worshipped even. There was a God of some kind. Go around the world throughout all of history, and every single civilization would be found trying to reach out for God. I mean, even now, go to an unreached tribe in Papua New Guinea or the Amazon, wherever unreached tribes live, if there's any left. And without any kind of outside influence or brainwashing from the outside world, you can be certain they will have some kind of spirituality there. They will be worshiping something. They will naturally believe in something beyond the physical, and they'll be trying to reach out to it through chants or potions or dances or something like that, because faith is intrinsic. We are default theists. According to best estimates, around 95% of humans in history have been theists of some kind, and only 1% have been atheists. Now, if atheism was so innate, if it was our default position, wouldn't we expect those numbers to be the other way around? Wouldn't we expect atheism to be more than 1%? Humans are instinctively theists. We are theists by default. And Christianity is simply the message that we no longer have to hopelessly grope around in the dark for this unknown creator that we instinctively know is there but don't know how to get to, like some unreached tribe in the Amazon. We don't have to do that anymore, because Christianity is the message that God has come to reveal himself to us. He is no longer unknown. He has revealed himself in the form of Jesus Christ. So we are no longer with any excuse, because he has come down to us to reveal himself openly, and his name is Jesus Christ. Fifthly and finally, the idea that science textbooks would come back exactly the same in 1,000 years' time, that's probably wrong too. Gervais seems to have a firm belief that the science he believes in today, and which fills scientific textbooks today, will still be considered true in 1,000 years' time. That all the stuff in our books is settled, is constant, it's unchanging, and therefore will still be there 1,000 years after he dies. And therefore, because of its constancy, and because it's unchanging, he can put his faith in this stuff. But actually, it's unlikely that this stuff won't change. Human understanding of the universe is always changing. We still don't know nearly as much as what we sometimes like to think. And quite frankly, there's stuff going on in this universe that we still have no clue about. What scientists consider true in one moment can often be falsified in the very next moment. So by way of example, it is believed that as low as 60% of what was once considered settled scientific fact in the 19th century is still considered true by scientists today. Therefore, it could easily be the case that in another 1,000 years' time, that's a very long time, much of what we consider settled scientific fact today has also been falsified, that our textbooks would by then be considered completely obsolete. So the point I'm trying to make here is to wager your eternity on the idea that the science of your short lifespan happens to be 100% correct, and therefore you can put your faith in it and it will never change from now on. That's probably unwise. It could easily be that the things you hold on to today and put your faith in today and put forward as reasons not to believe in God, that could be falsified in 10 or 20 years from now. Even worse, 10 or 20 years after you die. And then what? Because by then it's too late. There are many things that scientists once believed categorically disproved the Bible, but then later discoveries were made, archaeological discoveries, scientific discoveries, and it turned out actually the Bible was right all along. So it's unwise to place your faith in the incomplete knowledge of man over the complete knowledge of God, and to believe the science of current year is error-free, because it's probably not. It's especially unwise to place your faith in the incomplete knowledge of man when the Bible keeps being proven right again and again and again. Despite centuries of scrutiny, it keeps being proven correct. At some point, it's going to make sense to place your faith in God and trust in his wisdom over the wisdom of man. which is always incomplete. So those are 5 reasons why this argument from Ricky Gervais is complete nonsense.